What's happening to everybody? How you doing? Yeah, so this is like I'm impromptu. I've just decided to go live. I just wanted to go and kind of talk about a couple of topics that have been being pushed around on the YouTube channel. Lots of folks doing excellent, passing examinations. And then I'm running into a lot of recent folks that are joining us on the channel that basically are looking to move this along. And so some of the students will spend a lot of time with us in our channel and learning and everything else. We're in their pre-licensing classes. And this is for y'all today, where I'm like, man, is there a way that we can short circuit this, kind of move it along in terms of a study session to help those that are looking to kind of move with what's happening? So welcome to our channel. This is Dee. My name is Dee Kumar, and we have been in the business of helping folks pass their real estate examinations, and we put out content for those folks and the mortgage licensing folks, and it's all about exam prep with my stuff. And so we have been doing this for some time now, and I've been teaching for a very long time, by the way, meeting all of you through the channel and then doing my sessions with people, private groups and everything else. It's been a lot of fun, and we've been getting a lot of feedback on what's been happening. So what I want to do today for joining us live is, if you are studying for your real estate exam right now and you want to cut through the fluff and only focus on what matters, then these study sessions that we're going to start placing out are for you. So I know a lot of you are out there trying to study while working full-time jobs, taking care of family, juggling things like classes and work and the kids, if you have them, and everything else. We're coming up on summer, by the way. Or are you just trying to change your life and you're trying to start a new career as quickly as possible? One of the best parts of real estate is the fact that we can just do that. We can just start it and we can just get into it. So I think that that's a pretty spectacular way to do it. There's a relatively, low barrier to entry. Some states have more pre-licensing hours than others. And then there's these pesky exams. And so one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is thinking that they need to spend months studying every single thing from their real estate courses before they're actually ready, quote unquote, to, sort of take the exam. But then life gets in the way, as it does for all of us. And then they don't take it at all. And it's funny, right? I haven't been live in a while. We've been working on a lot of projects and a lot of, things in the background. And so I was just sitting around and I was just working on stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to sort of go out there. So today I want to show you how I would study if I wanted to pass the real estate exam, as quickly as possible. And so we're going to go over what actually matters for this exam. And I'm not just trying to memorize everything. What students waste time doing a lot of that memorizing and sort of getting ready to get ready kind of scenarios. And the logic here is, my goal is to try to teach or coach on how to study smarter so you can pass faster and then start your career sooner. And so that's the overall sort of arc of what we try to do here. And afterwards, going through a quick study session, we're going to talk about agency today. So I'm going to kind of get us into topically what I think is relevant inside of the world of agency and why. And it's going to be very, very brief. Afterwards, I'm going to show you the full step-by-step structure. And as many of you know, you might have checked it out, we have this amazing real estate masterclass, which I've put together over the years of teaching, and Kate and I have kind of put together all of the little pieces of it, specifically crafted to be able to trim off the majority of the garbage that you don't need for the exam. So everything is great. Learning is great. You're meeting a self-proclaimed nerd. I love learning. And so everything to me isn't garbage. I like the minutia. I like all the little bits and pieces. But the truth is, when you're taking an examination, you just don't need a huge percentage of the material that you're learning. You're going through your books in all of the states that you're in, and the book might be 600 pages, and the instructor might be burning the clock because they have to, because 180 hours in Texas is something that is a lot of time. And so they got to go through all of this material with a fine-tooth comb. And, the 30 pages of agency that you just studied, you might only need about 4 pages of that stuff. And so that's the motivation here. And then I'm going to show you exactly how we organize inside of our masterclass so you can understand what that's about. Now, it's available on our Shopify store for instant download. A lot of students are raving about it. It's working for them. It filters through everything that you need, and that's the best part. And the way that I present the content in there is done very neuroscience-y. There's a lot of logic and strategy behind the way that I learned to teach over the years. And so the stuff that comes out of my mouth, even in the stuff on this YouTube channel, is all done by that design. And so it's made to make you as successful as possible in the shortest amount of time. So let's get into it. I'm excited to have you all here today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do some study strategy. All right, to get started, let's talk about how to study for this exam, because I'm telling you, it's very, very unlikely that you need to be studying for months for this type of test. And if you are, that's fine, but chances are you're maybe studying less efficiently than you need to be, and that's the best way to get overwhelmed. So the direct path to getting overwhelmed or something else coming up and sidelining you is that. So the goal sets for me when I do private coaching is I try to make it fairly aggressive. One of the questions that I'm trying to ask is, well, when are you taking this thing? Well, I need to get ready, and I just finished my class. Now I need to study. Okay, well, let's think about a date. Let's think about committing to something when it's coming up. Everybody tries to go on a diet right before they go on summer vacation, right? So like everybody has a goal set, and this is no different. This is sort of the thing you're going to do. So number one is avoid the overwhelm. We don't want to be overwhelmed about all of the content and, wasting sort of time thinking about what you want to do. All right. One of the best things that we can always do when we're learning is we can always get the source of information from which all of the exam questions are generated from, and that's your state outlines. So I would download the state outlines and always have it ready and available so you can go through it. And then what I would do is use your textbook, your pre-licensing course, your content from your state's real estate website, or any videos that go topic by topic so you can make notes on the most important concepts from every single unit. If you troll through and dig around on my site, I think you'll find how to do Cornell notes. And, a lot of people don't do or watch, some stuff. I would learn about Cornell notes. I would learn about like the main topics. What do you think are the main items that are higher probability? Now, one of the best things that I've been doing over the years, I've been able to filter through tons of information and tell you what I think is going to be on that exam based off of my experience if I were writing the test questions. So it never hurts to work with somebody that's been doing this and mentally focused in that space for a very long period of time. So whoever you're learning from, that's a good prerequisite when you're learning. Now, you're going through these outlines topic by topic so you can make as many notes on the important pieces only. And then if you're in a time crunch, I would prioritize the topics that are going to show up the most. You can use things like, I'm going to show you an illustration of the Massachusetts outline. That's where we are right now. And, you're going to sort of go through and prioritize and go, wow, contracts is 20% of this examination. Ooh, that's important. And then these are the phrases. And you're going to sort of start to break these down. So you're studying the vocabulary. The questions may be confusing, but if you can identify key words, then it can help you decipher the what that is being asked. Now, most questioning is broken into knowledge base, into application, and into analysis style questions. And so you want to understand what you're in for. And I meet a lot of students and I find that they have a decent amount of knowledge. So their theory is pretty solid, but then it's the other pieces that they're not putting together. So we're going to focus on high frequency topics. That's important. You're just going to pop this up and I'm just going to jump on the side here. All right, there I am. Cool. Again, this is live, so bear with me. This isn't a beautifully edited, production here. But I just want to get this off my chest because I've been, a lot of students have been asking me this. So I would not need to memorize everything. That's the goal. I would focus on high frequency topics. How do you know what those are? Well, if you go to your outline, let's go check this out. I'm just going to, this is crude, but I want to show you every testing center. Let me just blow this up as much as I can. Every testing center is going to have, this is like about right here. That's good. So every testing center is going to have some kind of, that's better, examination outlines, and this is in Massachusetts. So, I'm going to show you a few of the pages here. This is the breakdown. So if y'all are taking the salesperson's examination, it's going to break it down. If you're taking the broker's exam, it's going to break it down. I would always start here. I would know what I'm getting into. I wouldn't listen to the instructor. I wouldn't do any of that stuff. I just get this right here, and you want to make sure you crack it open and go through it and understand. If you go through it once before your pre-licensing classes, if you haven't started yet, you're going to find a huge amount of benefit here. You're going to read through topics and look at phrases that are going to internalize in your brain. And then when you do come across them when you're at class, it's going to jar your memory. And so it's important that you're making these connections, these neural pathways right away. And sort of that's important. So I would kind of go in there looking at data like this. Then I'm just going to show you, I'm just looking over my shoulder. I want to make sure this is clear. This is probably a little small for you guys to read on the video. So you might have to, I'm not trying to show you specific topics here, but I'm just trying to show you, this is the general portion of the real estate principles and practices in Massachusetts. All right. So for brokers and salespersons. And if you're looking here at the very top, Roman numeral 1 on the top left here from your perspective, you see property ownership, and it says sales 10% and brokers 10%. So all that means is that the salesperson exam has 10% of the salesperson's exam is going to land on this major topic, and 10% of the broker's exam. So you're learning how much dedication to each specific topic that you need to put in to make sure that you're focusing on the right items. It's all about the amount of stress that you're putting on the more important topic, right? So like if you're, for example, looking at this going, wow, look at all of this stuff, real and personal property, land characteristics, encumbrances and their effects on title, encroachments, types of ownership, ownership and severalty, sole ownership, implications of ownership, tenancy in common, joint tenancy. These are all the fancy phrases that you're learning in your classes right now. Situations which require appraisals, if we're looking at valuation over that, like down over here, land use controls, or valuation. And so I'm looking through all of this, trying to say, wow, there's a lot of different topics here. Look at financing. It's 10% of your examination for both, and 9% for the broker's exam. And there's all of these different topics, FHA insured loans, VA. Now, if you're looking through your book, you're going to go, oh my goodness, there's like 6 pages on FHA. There's like 5 pages on VA. Well, you need to know like 3 things about VA loans, maybe 2. You need to know about like 2 or 3 things for FHA. You don't need to know pages of information. And so this is where you're going to cross and start to get more and more efficient. Like, for example, in the Masterclass, we filter out the topic to the concept, and it's like, okay, these are only the things that you need to know for this section. Are you going to become a master at this? Nope. I'm not looking to become a master or make you masters at real estate so you know every single detail. Take your career and learn every single detail if you want to. But I will tell you, if you can filter properly, it's going to shave off a ton of time. Now, look at this one. I'm just going to show you this one because this is the same in like every state. If you look at contracts, which again is on the far left here, contracts is a tremendous large part excuse me, of most general exams. And it's about 20%. It's 19% here, but let's say it's 20% just for giggles. This is where I would now be placing a little bit more weight. Now, there was another section before that was about 10%. So I might go, okay, these concepts are important. I'm going to try to extract the most important pieces. But you know what? If I'm taking an examination, I'm playing the game, then I can say, as long as I know the 10% pieces to a reasonable degree, I'm going to focus my attention on the section that's going to be 20% of the examination. And those are the things that you want to do. This is called effective management of the content outline. So the first thing we're doing is we're getting acquainted with these terms. Some of them you just know, some of them you have no clue, and you're looking at all of this stuff, but you're doing this in the way it's laid out here, because when the states are approving these outlines, they're following this sort of learning rubric, and that's what you want to do. Now, if you look here, every state has a state portion, and this is the state portion right here. Again, this isn't super blown up, so I'm going to try to keep it as big as I can. But, again, Massachusetts has these. If the state of X is going to have the same structure and the same sort of idea, but it's mostly going to be different in terms of statutes and Commonwealth regulations or regulations in your particular statute, however you're codifying them and however you're delineating them and reflecting those. But none of that matters. The concept of all of it is virtually the same, with the exception of some states have different laws about different issues that have come up. But generally speaking, a lot of this stuff is fairly consistent. Okay, so this takes away a humongous amount of stress when you're going through and you're able to kind of see what you're up against. And then you can very specifically study those items when it comes down to it. Let me get over here. Get out of here. All right. So that was the outlines, right? So that's something that is pretty important if you work with me, even on the private level. I just got off a private session just moments ago. It's exactly the first place that I start. It's this first place because it's the most important. It's going to identify what we need to think about and how we need to start thinking. I'm not even getting into System 1 and System 2 cognitive understanding and cognitive loads. That's all neuroscience that, my approach is always based on science and logic. Now, on the other side, we focus on high frequency topics. I just kind of showed you how to get there. Then we learn patterns. Patterns are the most important thing as you are learning. Anything that we learn, everything that we learn through patterns. As kids, we learn through patterns. As adults, we learn through patterns. We sometimes forget as adults that most of what we're doing is just using the skills that we've developed as children. And so learning patterns, not paragraphs. As something phenomenal happens when adults grow bigger, they feel the need to go linear in a paragraph format to learn. And we're looking for patterns. And doing that alone is going to help you. What is the pattern that you can identify in these three phrases? What is the pattern that the test writer has identified inadvertently in the last 6 questions about contracts? And you're looking for those commonalities. More importantly, not in the questions, but in the answers. So I'm looking at the answers. I'm looking at learning the patterns. I'm learning things like condemnation always patterns with eminent domain. I'm learning adverse possession and an easement by prescription, always kind of pair together. Those phrases are in many states oftentimes crossed. And so we are learning. I'm learning the counterpoint to certain words. So I might learn a word as a freehold estate, and maybe the counterpoint could be leasehold estate. I'm learning police powers, and I'm also learning those being public restrictions versus what private restrictions are. And so I'm playing this game where I'm finding out the patterns. By doing that, you're studying way smarter. You're being able to cut through the information in a way that's pretty important, and you're practicing, right? So you're using repetition, you're practicing questions. One of the most important things that you can do, as a matter of fact, is you can take as many practice questions as you humanly can. And you're not just memorizing answers. This is something that I see even on our YouTube channel, man. And I'm watching, like we watch. We're not like just these passive folks. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes that's going on, a lot of discussions. And so I see that all the time. It's like people are just memorizing what I'm saying in some instances. In some instances, I know they're picking up on the subtleties of me and my question analysis and like listening through that stuff. And that's what's making the difference. So just don't memorize answers. You really need to understand what is being asked of you. And that's very important. So for every question you got wrong, write a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of the correct answer. Now, many times that's going to help you kind of sort through. And it's a different, idea when you're kind of working at things. Now, on exam day, read questions and answers at least 2 times. When I'm coaching under timed conditions. I'm trying to shave time off the clock, but I want a student to know what 1 minute feels like. You want to practice under time. You want to understand that. You want to understand the stressors that do come up. Many of you I know are nervous test takers. So all of the pieces that you need to work on to get there, you're doing. And then you're reading these questions at least twice. A minute at the testing center can be very fast, but a minute, in the gym, that's a lot more of a different story. It's all relative, right? And so that's one of the biggest stressors. So always practice under time conditions and practice as many questions as you can and listen through when folks are going through questions. Now, if you're really stuck on a question, move on and go back to it later. You want to mark it. And if you don't want, if it won't do you any good basically if you miss out on a 3 or 4 easier questions because you wasted too much time on a tough one. So the marking game is important. You're sifting through. Sometimes I'll do it in lots. Sometimes I might advise people to say, hey, look, go through the first 10 questions, go through each one, read them twice, and then mark them, and then go back and start. You're going to go through all of these. Now, hopefully you're finding several of them that you just know the answers to, and you can go back and now you're building confidence. Some of the other ones that are more problematic, you're experiencing for the first time, and then your brain is thinking and working through the problems, and then you're coming back to them later. And why that's important is otherwise you're crescendoing constantly. You're going through the cortisol dump and the stressors each and every time from question 1 through question 80. And so if you don't know what's the next question coming up, it's going to really mess with your head. So I would start doing those kinds of things as you're practicing. Many of the test simulators have the ability to mark and move forward so that you can jump around. I would say definitely take advantage of that. Okay? All right. So there's just some tips and tricks. Let me jump to the quick agency training here just to give you an idea of how I would do this with, let's say, agency. And so I'm going to jump in here. Today's focus is agency and relationships. It's a decent portion of your exam. And why agency questions feel so confusing. One thing that is very evident inside of agency is there's a lot of sort of analysis-based questions. And so with the analysis-based questions, these are things that you want to make sure that you are carefully reading the answers. There's a lot of tricks here. All right. So that's sort of the way to go about this. What we typically see is students are memorizing definitions instead of concepts. You want to focus on the concepts. I'm going to have a sip of something, by the way. I haven't been lecturing at a microphone for a little while. I hope you guys are doing well. Okay. The exam tests application, the exam tests analysis, and the student goes in with knowledge and then gets sort of, pushed to the side or flotsam and jetsam, in like rough surf, if they don't know how to apply the question. And so one key word can change the entire answer. And one of the things that test writers do in the world of this topic agency is they do just that. They manipulate keywords. They change one phrase. It's just like, very subtle many times. And so you want to understand relationships and the easy points. And these are very important to understand as you're getting into it. So, for example, what is agency? Agency is one person represents another. That's nice and simple. So you want to always boil your definitions down. Every author I've ever met, God bless them all, will have some long-winded, drawn-out explanation of everything in there just to sound fancy many times. And a lot of these folks are very bright, and I've met a lot of the writers of these books. And so, they might refer to agencies as something different. The first thing I would do is I would try to simplify it. Easy. What really is this definition in a quick way? Agent owes duties to whom? The principal is also known as the client. So again, you're learning patterns. And so anytime you see the word principal, then the pattern automatically in my head is client equals principal. I work for the principal. I work for the client. Agent owes duty to the client. Duty is known as, and you'll learn, fiduciary obligation. And then it expands into the next thought pattern and thought tree. So that's sort of how this is going to work. Principal equals the person being represented. And then there's a word customer, and that does not equal the word client. So the customer is treated differently than the client. We owe the duty to the client or the principal. Agency is where one person represents and others. So again, I'm playing the game here, trying to compartmentalize all of this stuff very quickly. I might be writing these correlations and understandings while the teacher is teaching those pieces. Those might be my follow-up questions. Can you simplify this, instructor person? Can you give me an easy way to remember? And then in the liners of my notes, if you learn how to do Cornell notes, that's what I do when I'm learning. But I put in sort of the margins, the key points. And then I type in, I write in type in or orate the main parts of what I think I need to know. And that's like the volume of the notes. And then I'm condensing and condensing and condensing. The exam loves the distinction between clients receiving a fiduciary duty and customers receiving honesty and fairness. It's on every exam everywhere in the United States. And they're gonna bang it on you too. And so always identify who is being represented. And that's going to help you tremendously when you're sorting through this. And again, this isn't a lecture on what agency is. You guys are already reading the book. You're already reading the lectures. You're already going through it. You might be going through it right now in your class and you're just ignoring the teacher. Hopefully you're not. But anyway, this is sort of how I would approach it. I'm telling you, it's like one of the ways, the easiest things. And you think and forget sometimes as an instructor, I'm like, people might know this stuff. I'm like, no, people don't think about this stuff. They're focused on the content versus the context of how to learn, right? So fiduciary duties that you must know. And every class is going to teach you either cold AC or old car, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. Cold AC, care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality. These are the things, the fiduciary duties that I owe to the client. So they receive the fiduciary duties. And so you want to remember, like, this is the important stuff. I'm just going to get a little pen here and mark this puppy. And that's how all of this stuff kind of goes together. And you want to know what these are, know the interchanges between these. And you also want to know the patterns here. And you're learning the initialisms and acronyms. And so that's definitely on every exam. So an example would be, the seller tells the listing agent they would accept less. So my seller tells me, hey, Dee, I'm going to accept less. Can the agent disclose this to the buyers? This is a classic scenario that you see on real estate exams everywhere. And the answer is no, because it would violate one of these fiduciary duties, that being of confidentiality. It's one of the fiduciary duties that we owe to the client. I'm just going to write that here. I'm notorious for doing that. And then the exam tests the ethics and the legal duties. And so they are definitely, especially y'all broker candidates, you're going to see a lot of ethics-based scenarios. And you're going to see more than one answer that could be correct and argued. And those are frustrating, right? You're looking through them. So you want to make sure that you're playing this game. You're going to a different amplitude here. It's not just memorizing the definition. So for those my friends that are watching the vocab videos, when you see the vocab phrases, I would also be playing this game where you're looking for the patterns. What does this word pattern with? And then you're going through it and maybe you pause the video for a second. You go, what else does this word correlate to or contradict? Or what is the difference between this and the next topic? And that's how I would start breaking this stuff down. It's going to serve you well, trust me. Common types of agency relationships. Just moving on a little bit here. Seller's agency, buyer's agency, dual agency, designated agency, and transactional broker, which they sometimes call facilitator. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. Boom. Okay, so that's facilitator. And so you definitely want to know that. Sometimes some states call them transaction brokers and some states call them facilitators. And you want to know the hierarchy. You want to know, in seller's agency, it kind of looks like this. Here's the seller, here's the buyer. The agent is in between them. The agent owes this person, and seller's agency is the client. And then the buyer is treated like a customer, et cetera, et cetera. So good instructors are going to give you good visuals, give you an explanation, and sort of open them up a little bit. So look out for those things. Many books have diagrams too that I've noticed over time. So you're seeing that. So understand these correlations and visually how they look. If you can understand them visually in your mind, then you're going to be able to regurgitate them in your mind when you're looking at the question. If this material is relatively new to you, I've been teaching this stuff for some time. So for me, it's very easy to visualize. But when I started teaching this stuff, I knew very quickly that these are obtuse concepts. And if you don't visually explain things in very methodical ways, so many times, anybody that's ever had the grace of experiencing me, my God, in a classroom, holy moly, I've a tendency to go after it. I'll do an 8-hour session, 10-hour session. I used to do 4 days in a row for 40 hours here, straight through in Massachusetts. It was nuts. And I'd be unrelenting. But at the end of those sessions, there was a tremendous amount of exchange in knowledge, concepts, and application functionality. And you would see humongously successful students taking the thing right away and just passing. It was like, boom, done. I get it. And so a lot of that comes from years of explaining things and visually being able to explain them as well. I'm not a good artist, by the way. I'm a horrible artist, but I just make lots of little chicken scratch doodles and stuff like that. Anyway, dual agency is another huge exam topic, representing both parties. And something like that where one agent is representing or one company is representing both parties is big. And so therefore, I'm going to automatically earmark that as something of importance, and I'm going to try to learn how it functions, and I'm going to learn what's required of it. So most important thing is something called informed consent. When this is done, this is the same across the United States, and there is always a limited bit of confidentiality because you're serving two clients in dual agency. So both sides are your clients, and so therefore we have to limit the fiduciary obligation to both. Whether or not dual agency is allowed is state specific, and that's another big exam trap. But fundamentally, you need to know about these dual-hatted agency types, which the majority of states simply have. How agency is created and terminated are two other topics that you typically see. Express agreements versus implied. Again, express versus implied are the patterns, the correlations. Ratification and estoppel are two fancy vocab phrases. I usually teach people, if you don't learn them, that's not the worst part in the world. Ratification is not a big deal. Neither is estoppel. But express versus implied agency, for sure, you're going to want to know these as you're working through. And these are correlations. And so a key takeaway here is express written agency is via a signed agreement is the most common and legally safest method to establish an agency relationship. Implied and apparent agency are the most common sources of unintended liability for agents. And because it's one of those things that they try to teach you, you will see a lot of this unintended liability style of questioning on exams. And so these are key takeaways. When I'm looking at a book and I say these are unintended, then I'm going to say, ooh, a test writer is going to focus in on that. And I would just mark that in my book or in my notes and say, these are things that are going to possibly come up. How could I extract them in the form of a question? And then when you're practicing and practicing and practicing, you're going to come across these and go, ooh, that's the unintended liability piece that Dee was talking about here when how agency is created. And I know it sounds like this might be a big bit sort of a mountain to overcome here as we're learning a new way to approach the learning, but it's really not new. It's really just a way to consolidate your learning. And the biggest trick is you're trying to find out what you can filter out to just move this along a little bit and feel good about that. Now, how an agency relationship ends: completion, expiration, mutual agreement, death or incapacity, or breach. These are all classic in the books, and you're going to always see these. And again, these are situations where you need to memorize. How can I terminate agency? How can I create agency? Express versus implied. How can I terminate it? Well, the best way to terminate it is when the whole thing is over and it works out. So that's called completion. That's the most optimal way. Well, test writers like to give you the least optimal way many times. Well, what happens if the principal dies? They want to throw in a complex question there about that. Or both parties agree to terminate the listing. Mutual agreement. We can do it. Or if one of the parties does something that they shouldn't or maybe didn't do, that's called breach. So I want to know breach, and then I want to know, well, what happens if there's breach? What if the agent does all of their work and then the seller at the last minute decides not to sell? Are they still entitled to a commission? And so again, in the analysis of the answers, you're reading the complete answers. You know enough to structure agency questions that you should feel a lot better about when you're doing it, okay? And then how do you answer agency questions on the exam? Find who is being represented. Look for fiduciary duties or violations to those duties. Identify key vocabulary. There's not a ton in this section, even though it might seem overwhelming. And eliminate emotional answers. Never take the bait. They are always going to serve you these red herrings on exams, and they want you to take the bait. So read through the answers very carefully and make sure you're doing that twice. And here's an exam hack for you. Watch out for absolute words, always words, never, all, only, must, which usually signal a false or tricky answer, and reversal words like except, not, unless, but, which flip the meaning quickly of the questions and are easy to skim past. Reading comprehension is one of the big things that a lot of people struggle with, believe it or not, as they're reading on exams. So another thing that you can practice is reading out loud these questions so that you can hear yourself with the pauses and everything else. Remember, things like qualifier words, like usually, generally, and may, tend to indicate a safer, more correct answer. And they're going to throw these in there. And now once you see this stuff, it can't be unseen. So I'm kind of exposing how a lot of this stuff works. All right. So that is a little bit more about that. Our masterclass kind of goes through the, some of the quickest ways to do this. And so I know we have a ton of videos on YouTube, and, I'm thrilled that many of you are going through them, and it's helping so many of you pass the exams. I mean, this is pretty cool, right? Like, you can just find me on YouTube and just like listen in and like pass. Like, that's pretty cool. But this isn't for everybody. Some people need a little bit more. And so it pleases us greatly. We love the comments, so keep them coming, by the way. And, feel free to tag me on other platforms as well. We're doing a lot more stuff, and a lot more cool stuff is coming, but we still get plenty of comments asking for like tips. And that's one of the reasons why we did videos like this. This is coming out sort of under that logic. And we still get plenty of comments for how to study, or what am I doing wrong, and where you can find specific topics. And I certainly get it. What I have found, though, is if I just went into a discussion on theory, then it typically doesn't always go the best way. And I get that. A lot of students don't want to watch theory. They're already being exposed to tons of theory. They just want to practice. And they just want to sort of hit the ground and try and cover a lot of these topics as quickly as they can. So to help solve this, the program that we built, our masterclass, is built directly around the exam outlines in every state. Doesn't include the state-specific content, but we've come up with some really cool additional supplements that kind of help with that learning, or consolidate it better, because we've just been in the education space for so long. So we certainly help folks out. But it is organized for the national and general topics about all real estate. So they apply in every single state, and they're built on topic by topic. So you don't have to try and piece everything together yourself and risk missing something. And now the masterclass also includes printable digital and audio flashcards and premium practice questions, I think 200 of them, and a pretty sick video bundle of me going through all of this stuff. And in the videos themselves, I'm filtering like crazy. I'm like, okay, here's the topic. This is the thing. I know this seems like you need to know a million things. These are like the 6 things you need to know. And like, I focus and teach you those 6 things. And so it's very efficient. And so if you're looking for that very efficient, awesome way to kind of do stuff, then I think this is going to help you. All right. So that is a little bit of me talking. And hopefully you learned a little bit of something about agency, and hopefully some of these tips and tricks are going to help you to check things out. I'll drop the link to the masterclass if you want to check it out in the description here. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. Even if you comment on the YouTube channel, we're happy to get back to you there. You can always shoot us an email at support@relicencepro.com. That gets to like everybody. If you're looking for things like private sessions or anything like that, I do have limited space availability. We get booked up pretty quickly, but I am good with real estate exams, broker exams. I'm good with mortgage exams. I'm pretty good with all of this stuff. So looking forward to helping you, seeing you in upcoming videos, seeing you in the next thing. We've got a crazy video we're about to drop pretty soon. It's just on the editing bay, and we will see you soon. Thank you once again. If you haven't subscribed, my goodness, subscribe to the channel. If you like what you're hearing, if you like the videos, you know what to do. Smash that like, the support is awesome. Sometimes, we put stuff out and when we first were starting, man, it was like crickets. We didn't hear anything. And now we're hearing this audience. You guys are maniacs. We love it. We love the comments. I love the funny stuff, man. I'm a goofball. I love joking around. And I love being able to work with you guys. I love when you're successful. I love when you get to go and do the things you want to do and you succeed. I love the success stories. I just heard one the other day of a student and they just finally saved up enough on a couple of deals to buy a home. Man, that's awesome. They struggled with the exam for what seemed like forever. And it just makes me feel good. It makes me feel accomplished the right ways, the right way that we should feel good. By helping others. And, so I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have a voice in anything is relevant. And it makes me feel good that I have some voice to share with you so it can make you be successful and find success. I wish you well this evening. Thank you very much for hearing me out. Check out the Masterclass if you want to. There's a sample on our Shopify store. You can check it out there. And if you have any questions, I look forward to answering them. Good luck with your studies. Good luck on your tests. And we'll see you in the next video.